Mall security drags black teen out of children's reading corner. Then the mayor walks in and says, "That's my grandson." They dragged him out like he was a thief. He was holding a picture book about dinosaurs. The entire mall food court stopped chewing. The overhead lights buzzed as if embarrassed. A 15-year-old boyskin the color of mahogany, eyes wide with a mix of confusion and shame, was being yanked out of the children's reading corner by a man twice his size, dressed in a tight, navy blue security uniform that bore no name tag. "Sir, I didn't do anything," the boy cried. "Tell it to someone who cares," the guard barked, his grip tightening. No one moved. No one helped. The boy's backpack fell open as he stumbled. The only thing that tumbled out was a notebook, a few crayons, and a library card. Tarek had just wanted to sit somewhere quiet. It was Saturday, and he'd gotten off the number 5 bus 2 stops early just to visit the downtown mall's little reading nook, the one tucked in the corner of the second floor, next to the toy store, where toddlers sat cross-legged on alphabet carpets and story time was read aloud every afternoon. It reminded him of when his mom used to bring him here before the chemo, before the silence in the house grew heavier than her voice. Now he came alone. He sat on a beanbag, flipping through a book called The T-Rex Who Couldn't Roar, smiling at the thought of his baby sister giggling at the funny illustrations. She loved dinosaurs, but this time a mall employee had watched him. Not the white kids with ice cream cones. Not the giggling Asian twins pulling books from the shelves and making forts. Just him. Maybe it was the hoodie. Maybe it was the skin. Maybe it was both. 5 minutes later, a call was made. A security guard approached. "What are you doing here?" "Reading," Tarek replied. "You with anyone?" "No. I came by myself." "That's so?" The next moment Tarek was standing, pleading, and then being dragged. When the elevator doors dinged and opened, she walked in like thunder. Mayor Lorraine Jenkins had just returned from a city council meeting, still wearing her formal blazer with the city crest on the pocket. She didn't expect to see a crowd gathered near the children's reading corner. She didn't expect to hear her grandson's voice panicked, breaking above the murmur of confused shoppers. But she heard it. "Tarek?" she called. The security guard turned. His expression changed first to confusion, then recognition, then something like dread. "Let go of him. Now." I didn't know he was. He's a child." "You dragged a child out of a space meant for children. What exactly did you think he was going to steal? A coloring book?" "I was just following protocol. He wasn't supervised. My grandson is 15. He can vote in 3 years. He can enlist in 3 years. But today, all he wanted to do was read about dinosaurs." She reached for Tarek, who stood frozen. People were filming now. The mayor turned slowly, her eyes scanning the crowd. Her voice dropped, but it reached everyone. "This is what we mean when we say systemic. When our children can't even exist in peace, read in peace without someone assuming the worst of them. You didn't see a child. You saw a threat." The mall went quiet, then awkward clapping, then silence again. Tarek lowered his eyes. The mayor squeezed his shoulder. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." Back in her car, silence again. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Lorraine turned, startled. "For what?" "For making a scene." "You didn't make the scene," she said. "They did." Her hand found his. Her voice was soft but fierce. "Never apologize for being somewhere you belong." The mayor's office smelled like fresh coffee and tired hope. Tarek sat stiffly in the leather chair across from his grandmother's desk. The room was grand. Glass awards lined the shelves. Framed photographs of ribbon cuttings and marches filled the walls, but Tarek's eyes were fixed on a single photo. His grandmother, much younger, standing at a protest, holding a cardboard sign that read, "I am not a threat." Lorraine sat down with a sigh, tugging off her heels. "I should have been there sooner," she murmured. "I shouldn't have let you go alone." "You shouldn't have to follow me around for me to be safe," Tarek said quietly. His voice was raw, still hoarse from yelling, still wounded from the humiliation. Lorraine looked at him. Her grandson, once so full of bounce and wonder, now sat folded inward, shrinking, as if trying to disappear into himself. I talked to the mall director, she said. They've suspended the guard, issued a public apology, said they're reviewing their policies. Doesn't matter, he said. Of course it does. No, he said more firmly, eyes flashing. Because they didn't suspend him until you showed up, until cameras were rolling, until it looked bad. Lorraine couldn't argue with that. You know, Tarek said, I kept thinking about something. If you hadn't walked in, what would have happened next? She didn't answer. Would they have called the police? He asked. Would I be in a holding cell somewhere right now for loitering in a kids section? Lorraine's lips pressed into a hard line. I hate how scared I was, he whispered. I hate that I said sorry. I didn't do anything, but I still said sorry. She leaned across the desk, took his hands in hers. Tarek, listen to me. You didn't do anything wrong. They were wrong. But I also know what it means to survive something like that. Sometimes we say sorry just to get out of it alive. That's not weakness. That's survival. He didn't respond. That night, the video went viral. A shaky, vertical clip posted to social media showed the moment the guard pulled Tarek from the reading area. It showed him struggling to explain, to plead. It showed Lorraine arriving, the recognition in her eyes, and the trembling rage in her voice. The caption read, They thought he was a criminal. He was just reading. He was just a kid. Until the mayor walked in. By morning, it had over 2 million views. News vans parked outside City Hall. Lorraine's office line rang non-stop. Her communications director begged her to make a formal press statement. This is going to blow up whether you like it or not, he warned. Control the narrative now. But Lorraine had no interest in PR spin. She met with community leaders. She called a town hall, and she brought Tarek with her. The town hall was packed. People from every corner of the city showed up, mothers with babies, high school students in hoodies, retired teachers, activists, faith leaders. Some held hand-painted signs. Others simply stood, their arms crossed and eyes locked on the podium. Lorraine stepped up to the mic, her grandson beside her. I am Lorraine Jenkins, she began, and I have served this city for over 2 decades. But tonight, I am not speaking as your mayor. I am speaking as a grandmother, as a black woman, as someone who is tired of watching our children be treated like trespassers in their own communities. A murmur rippled through the room. Agreement, tension, pain. Last weekend, my grandson Tarek was dragged out of a public reading space, she continued. Not because he broke a rule, not because he posed a threat, but because someone looked at him and saw danger instead of innocence, saw crime instead of curiosity. Her voice cracked just once. She didn't apologize for it. This is not just about Tarek. This is about a pattern, about a system, about the quiet ways our children are told they don't belong. And we are here tonight to say enough. The room erupted into applause, but Lorraine wasn't finished. I am introducing legislation this month that will require bias training for all security personnel contracted in public and private spaces. We are creating a civilian oversight board for mall and transportation policing. And we are allocating new funds to youth advocacy groups across the city. More cheers. Some people stood. Some wept silently. Tarek looked up at her with something like awe. In the weeks that followed, the incident became a national conversation. Journalists called. Universities invited Lorraine to speak. Tarek's name trended on social media. Some people praised his composure. Others, uglier voices, mocked him, accused him of overreacting, called it race baiting. Tarek read the comments. He tried not to, but he did. You should be lucky the guard didn't shoot you, one post said. You're not special just because your grandma's the mayor. She made you into a victim for attention. He threw his phone across the room. It was Tarek's old art teacher, Mr. Dobbins, who found him sitting on the back steps of the school 2 days later. You okay? He asked, sliding down beside him. Tarek shrugged. Not really. Wanna draw? Tarek glanced at him. I haven't drawn in months. Now's a good time to start again. He handed him a sketchpad and a charcoal pencil. Tarek hesitated. Then he started to draw. He didn't draw the guard or the mall or the moment of humiliation. He drew a dinosaur, a giant, goofy-looking T-Rex with reading glasses and a stack of books under one arm. He laughed. Just a little, but enough. The city changed after that. Slowly, imperfectly, but it changed. The mall hired more diverse staff. The security contractor was replaced. The children's reading nook was expanded and renamed Tarek's Corner, complete with a mural of a smiling black boy holding a book. The city schools introduced new workshops on anti-bias. Police liaisons were assigned to youth programs. A poetry contest was launched in Tarek's name. And most importantly, Tarek stopped shrinking. He started speaking at schools, telling his story, not for pity but for power. "I'm not the only one this has happened to," he said at one assembly. "But I might be one of the lucky ones because someone important saw me. But you shouldn't have to be related to the mayor to be treated with dignity." At home, one evening, he stood in the kitchen helping his grandmother cook. She chopped onions. He stirred the rice. "You were brave," she said suddenly. "That day. I was terrified." "Bravery isn't about not being afraid," she said. "It's about telling the truth anyway." He looked at her. "Will it ever stop? The hate?" He nodded. She sighed. "I don't know, but I know we have to fight like it will, or nothing ever changes." He smiled. "I think I want to be like you," he said. "When I grow up." Lorraine turned, her eyes warm and full. "No, baby," she said. "You be like you, but louder." The letters started coming in the second week. Not emails, not tweets. Real letters, handwritten, in envelopes with stamps. Some were from parents. Some from other teenagers. A girl in Ohio wrote, "Thank you for showing me I'm not the only black kid who gets followed around in bookstores like I'm hiding something in my skin." A retired librarian sent a photo of her small-town reading corner, where she had hung up a printout of Tarek's dinosaur drawing with a sign underneath. "Every child is welcome here." Lorraine began saving the letters in a shoebox. Tarek didn't want to read them at first. He said it felt weird. But one night, unable to sleep, he opened the box. He read them all. One envelope stood out. No return address, just his name. Inside was a single sentence, typed neatly on thick paper. "I was that kid once. Don't let them turn you into what they expected." No name, no signature. Tarek held the letter like it might vanish if he breathed too hard. A few days later, he was invited to speak at a citywide student leadership summit. Lorraine offered to write a speech for him. He politely declined. Instead, he stood in front of 300 students, a little shaky, holding only a folded note card. He didn't use it once. "I used to think racism was loud," he said, "like shouting, or slurs, or hate crimes. But now I know it's quieter. It's the side eyes, the long stares, the way someone clutches their purse when you walk by, or asks if you're lost in a place you belong, or calls security on you for reading." Laughter rippled, then died. "I'm not special," he continued. "And that's the point. What happened to me happens every day. I just got seen. But I don't want to be a viral video. I want to be a voice." He looked up. For all the kids who got dragged out and didn't have a mayor walk in, the auditorium erupted. Later that evening, a boy named Javier came up to him, eyes shining. "I go to Westview," Javier said. "You probably don't remember, but we were in the same science camp in 7th grade. Tarek blinked. "Wait, Javi with the solar-powered skateboard?" Javier grinned. "That's me." They laughed. "I just wanted to say," Javier said, serious now, "that took guts. What you said. What you're doing. I'm just trying not to mess it up." "You're not," Javier said. "You're making it harder for them to ignore us." But not everyone was clapping. There were protests. Not against racism but against the mayor. Flyers began circulating that accused Lorraine of politicizing her grandson's experience. A right-wing commentator mocked Tarek's speech on national TV. "Here we go again. A kid reads one book and suddenly he's Rosa Parks. A city councilman running against Lorraine in the next election called her efforts an emotional overreach and claimed that security did nothing wrong but protect the space. Lorraine stayed calm in public. In private, she closed her office door and screamed into a pillow. Then the lawsuit landed. The security guard, the same man who had dragged Tarek out, was suing the city for defamation and wrongful termination. He claimed his actions were standard procedure and that the mayor had personally destroyed his livelihood. The media went wild. Tarek felt sick. "Is it my fault?" he asked. "No," Lorraine said firmly. "It's his choice to sue, not yours. He's trying to flip the story. That doesn't mean the truth has changed." But the court of public opinion didn't wait for trials. Online, the hate came harder. People accused Tarek of ruining a man's life. They dug through his school records, posted old photos, called him a liar, a spoiled brat, a setup. "Let it go," some said. It was one mistake. But for Tarek, it hadn't felt like a mistake. It had felt like a mirror, reflecting back a version of himself that others had decided on long ago. At school, he was different now. Some teachers treated him more carefully. Some classmates avoided him altogether. Others, mostly black and brown kids, came up to him quietly between classes and whispered, "Thanks, man. Keep going. We saw you." But Tarek was tired. Tired of the spotlight. Tired of explaining. Tired of being a symbol when he just wanted to be a teenager. One Friday he skipped school, wandered to the city library, sat in the children's section, even though he felt too tall for the chairs now. He opened a picture book. The librarian, a white woman with glasses and a soft smile, walked over slowly. "Can I sit?" He nodded. She lowered herself to the floor beside him. "I saw the video," she said gently. "I just wanted to say I am sorry." He didn't say anything. She waited. "I've been a librarian for 27 years, she went on. "I always thought I created a welcoming space, but now I wonder how many kids I didn't see." He finally looked at her. "I wasn't doing anything," he said. "I wasn't even being loud." "You were being exactly what you're supposed to be," she said. "A child. Curious. Present. Alive." A long silence. "Would you help me?" she asked. "With what?" "I want to make this place better. For everyone. I don't know what it needs, but maybe you do." Tarek blinked. No one had asked him that before. He nodded. They started a youth reading council. Once a month, teenagers from different neighborhoods met at the library to recommend books, redesign spaces, and talk about what inclusion really looked like. The room was loud, diverse, full of laughter. Kids who had never been listened to were suddenly being asked, "What do you want to read? What do you need to feel safe here?" Tarek didn't lead every meeting. He didn't want to be the face of anything anymore. But he was there, present. His voice carried weight, and he used it sparingly but powerfully. Back at home, Lorraine watched him change. He smiled more now, drew again. Sometimes, he would leave books around the house with sticky notes. "This one's funny. You'd like it." Sometimes, he'd bring home letters from kids younger than him who had read about his story and decided to write their own. He still had bad days. Days when the news stung. When another black boy in another city was hurt or killed or shoved to the pavement. On those days, Lorraine sat with him. No speeches. No answers. Just presence. "You don't have to fix it all," she'd say. "You just have to live." Loudly. Honestly. Fully. He would nod. And on the worst nights, she'd find one of his drawings tucked into the fridge door, usually of a dinosaur reading beneath a tree. The court hearing came quickly. The guard sat stiffly at the plaintiff's table, his lawyer hammering every point. That he'd been trained to respond to suspicious behavior. That he couldn't have known the boy wasn't a threat. That he'd been villainized in the media. Tarek sat in the audience beside his grandmother, his palms sweating. "He's lying," he whispered. "I know," Lorraine said. "But the truth doesn't always win," he said. She didn't respond, just squeezed his hand. Then the defense called its witness. Tarek. He didn't want to speak. Not again. Not here, under oath, surrounded by people who didn't know him and didn't want to. But he walked to the front, took the stand. The lawyer asked him to describe what happened. He did, slowly, clearly, without embellishment. "Why didn't you leave when the guard asked you to?" the lawyer asked. "Because I didn't understand why I had to." "Did you raise your voice?" "No." "Did you threaten anyone?" "No." "Were you alone?" "Yes." "What were you doing before he approached you?" "I was reading a book to a toddler I didn't know. Her mother had asked me to read to her while she went to the restroom. I said okay." The little girl had a pink dress. Her name was Zoe. A pause. "What was the book?" Tarek smiled faintly. "The Day the Crayons Quit." The courtroom chuckled softly. The ruling came 2 weeks later. The court dismissed the lawsuit. There had been no defamation, the judge wrote, only public accountability. The video had spoken for itself. Tarek exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. He didn't celebrate. He went to the mall. Not to grandstand. Not to cause trouble. Just to walk in, past the glass doors, through the food court and into the bookstore. He stopped by the children's section. It looked different now. The new mural stretched across the wall, bright colors. Kids of all races reading together under a giant tree. And there, in the center, was the dinosaur he had drawn. Glasses. Books under one arm. A wide, silly grin. And beneath it, a plaque. Tarek's Corner, a place for every child's story. He didn't cry. But he sat down, in one of the small beanbag chairs, and pulled a picture book from the shelf. 10 minutes later, a little boy wandered over. "Can you read it to me?" the boy asked. Tarek looked around. The boy's mother stood a few feet away, smiling. "Sure," Tarek said. He opened the book and began to read. Months passed. Lorraine was re-elected by the widest margin in city history. During her victory speech, she didn't talk about herself. She talked about books, and children, and futures that didn't begin with suspicion. "We cannot protect every child from every injustice," she said. "But we can make sure no child stands alone. We can create a city where they are not seen as threats but as promises." The crowd rose to its feet. Tarek watched from backstage. He didn't feel like a symbol anymore. He felt like a seed. And something was growing. By summer, Tarek was volunteering full-time at the library. He helped run a summer camp for kids aged 5 to 9, most of them kids of color. Many of them nervous to walk into big buildings with quiet rules and bright lights. He made them feel at home. He didn't wear a name tag. The kids just called him T, or the dinosaur guy. One afternoon, a girl named Layla tugged his sleeve. "Do you live here? In the library?" he asked, laughing. She nodded seriously. He leaned down. "Nope, I just visit. But when I was your age, I wanted to live here." "Why?" "Because books let you go places where nobody looks at you funny." She thought about that. "Can I live here too?" He smiled. "You already do." At night he wrote. Not just letters or speeches but stories. Some were about dinosaurs. Some about cities. Some about a boy who could disappear whenever someone assumed the worst of him but only reappear when someone truly saw him. He didn't know if he'd publish them. Maybe one day. But for now, writing helped. Then came the invitation. An email from the National Children's Literacy Foundation. They were awarding him the Youth Advocate of the Year. And they wanted him to speak. On stage. In front of 1,000 people. He almost said no. "I'm not a hero," he told Lorraine. "You don't have to be," she said. "You just have to show up." So he did. He wore a simple suit. No tie. A dinosaur pin on his lapel. He stood at the podium, took a breath, and looked out over the sea of faces. "I want to tell you a story," he began. The room stilled. "It's about a boy who went to a mall. Not to buy shoes. Not to cause trouble. Just to read. He didn't know that being young and black and quiet could still be seen as dangerous." He paused. "That boy was me. But he could have been anyone." He told the story. Not the viral one, the real one. About fear, shame, anger, and hope. I didn't choose to be seen, he said. But I chose what to do after. And what I've learned is that we don't have to become the stories others write for us. We can write our own. A beat. Even if we start as the villain in someone else's version. The crowd was silent. Then someone stood. Then another. And another. The standing ovation lasted for a full minute. That night he called Javier. You still building that solar skateboard? He asked. Javier laughed. No, but I'm building something else. An app. Matches kids with books based on what they've been through. Tarek blinked. Wait, hat's genius. You want in? Tarek grinned. Hell yeah. By the end of senior year, Tarek had 2 college offers. But he stayed in the city 1 more year. To build the app. To finish his library work. To stay close to Zoe. The little girl who still showed up every Saturday asking if he'd read to her again. She's your biggest fan, her mom said once. Tarek knelt beside her. I'm your fan too, he said. The final scene, perhaps, wasn't dramatic. Just a quiet moment. Tarek, older now, standing in front of a classroom of 2nd graders. Holding a picture book. A circle of curious faces around him. He opened the cover. This time, the name on the front was his own. The Boy Who Read Anyway, by Tarek Jenkins. He looked up, smiled, and began to read. The end.